Okay, welcome back to Old Man Media with your hosts Paul Buchanan
and
and
Will Rag.
William Ragg is going to be talking about Fred Neil, who is, to my knowledge, a folk and country musician who I recognise for having done Everybody's Talking. He wrote that song, I believe.
He did.
And he is obviously made popular by the Harry Nilsson version in the film Midnight Cowboy. Now, I also know the song The Dolphins that he does, and then Tim Buckley, Jeff Buckley's father, does a cover of it. But apart from that, he's not a very well-known fellow. So,
No.
would you like to
talk
to us a bit about Fred Neil?
Yeah, that's leads perfectly into why I think Fred Neil's really interesting, because he was actually incredibly influential to those around him, as I will get into. So this is a little bit of an experimental podcast, I think, in terms of our format that we've established over 6 episodes. Stopped. This is the 3rd episode we've done today, by the way. So I think
Hey, don't give away our secrets.
Right.
We record these live.
They go out
You're
same
listening
day,
live.
actually. We don't edit in post. We just go straight. So we've established a bit of a format where we both talk about a film or a piece of music we've listened to, together or separately. But now I've read a book on my own, and
Fucking
I'm
cheating on
going
me,
to
man.
tell you about it. So this could be a lot of me talking, which could be, I don't know, it could go one of two ways. But I think what I have to say is pretty interesting. I'd like to think it is anyway. It's going to be worth 3 episodes.
Well, they don't know it's going to be worth 3 episodes, but yeah, we're doing 3 episodes on this. But
Well, that's the perspective. We don't know. We'll see how long it goes.
could be more, could be less.
Could be more, could be less. Who knows? We'll put part 1 of question mark. No, we won't really.
I probably will.
Okay, fair enough. Paul's in charge here. Okay, so the best way to describe Fred Neil, I think, for people who don't know him, is he was a bit of a Forrest Gump of the 60s music scene.
Marty Supreme, you say.
No, I think very much unlike Marty Supreme. He was incredibly introverted, kept himself a lot, and really hated being famous and everything that brought with it. He just wanted to make music with his friends in his living room, drink a couple of beers and watch TV, and that was all he did. And as I'll get to, I think he had a lot of paranoia as well. He thought people were after him, which plays into a lot of the reason he. So what I knew about Fred before I read this book was that I'd heard the song "The Dolphins." It'd come on like Spotify suggested or whatever. And I was like, oh wow, this is fantastic. This is really interesting. Like the instrumentation's really something I just haven't heard before. And I went into it. I realised, he'd actually written "Everybody's Talking," and then I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I listened to Fred Neil, the album. Oh, that's really interesting. And I looked up about his biography, and the first song I'd listened to by him was "The Dolphins," and I found out he actually had backed away from music in like the early 70s to go and work on a dolphin sanctuary in Florida, which I thought that's so interesting. He found his the chorus of the song is searching for the dolphins, and he found his dolphins, which were literal dolphins, and he went and dedicated his life to that. Actually, the story I found after reading the book is a little bit different, and there's a bit more to it, but also it is also kind of that simple, is that he just wanted to do what he wanted to do. Anyway, that will make more sense in 3 episodes' time.
Or 4.
Or
maybe 2.
Or maybe 2, or maybe 6. But, so yeah, like I said, the Forrest Gump of the 60s, or just of music, kind of mid-20th century music. Okay, and the first example I have of this, you're going to like this one. At the beginning of the book, so also, right, I should mention the book I've read, right, before I get into this. That's The Bag I'm In, The Life, Music and Mystery of Fred Neil. Fantastically written by Peter Lee Neff. Very well documented. Talked to everybody who was still alive in, I think he did it throughout the 2010s. And everybody that was still alive that knew Fred Neil, he spoke to. But the problem with it, I think, is a lot of people had died, including Fred, who died in 2001.
I'm
So
interested to see how his music got found by first Harry Nilsson and then Tim Buckley.
um,
And we'll
yeah,
get
so
to that,
Tim
I'm
Buckley's
sure.
really interesting. I'll get into that this episode. But yeah, Harry Nilsson. I don't know how he found Fred Neil. I think. I don't have that written down, but basically, kind of Fred Neil was like a musician's musician, basically, and a lot of musicians in the '60s knew him, and Harry probably just would have been handed it by another musician, or he probably would have heard him performing in New York in the '60s at some point, and was like, "Oh, that's Fred, that guy that was performing at Cafe War. I'll go and check him out." So I don't actually have a story for you of how Harry found him. I do know how Everybody's Talking came to be a Midnight Cowboy, but that's a long section I'll get into in a bit.
I'm walking here.
Thanks. Also, do yourself a favour and watch Midnight Cowboy. Fantastic film. First film, right? So the editor of that film was the first black person to be nominated for best editing in the Oscars.
Wow. I
Interesting
think that
fact there.
the score is really good in it as well. That kind of it's funny. There's like a '90s lo-fi fucking album band. I don't know, indie rock kind of thing.
Right.
And I think they're called Ace Tone, and they do a cover of the song from
Oh,
Midnight Cowboy. For
yes,
some
I
reason.
have heard that. Yeah,
And
it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, right. Forrest Gump. The first thing, right, is there is a possibility
Fred Neil,
that Fred Neil. Yeah, talking about Fred Neil again.
not
right?
Forrest Gump, not Tom
Not-
Hanks.
Fred Neil is like Forrest Gump in that there is possibility that his grandfather was Jimmy Rogers,
The country
the
star.
original OG country boy. He was he's called like the grandfather of country music, along with the Carter family, and basically, Fred's grandmother Addie Neal, who he owed a lot of his musical talents to. She was only a year older than Jimmy and was born in the same town, Meriden, Mississippi. And when Addie was 18, Laura, Fred's mother, was born in Selma, not far away by train from where. Basically, Addie was 18 when Laura was born, and Jimmy Rogers worked in Selma, which isn't far away by train. And obviously, Jimmy Rogers was working on the train. He was the singing brakeman. So that's the first interesting fact about Fred. But let's get into his biography a little bit. So he was born Frederick Ralph Morlock Jr. on March 16th, 1936. He wasn't born and raised in Florida. He was actually born in Cleveland. And he moved to St. Petersburg when he was 6 in Florida. It's about this time that Fred would start to learn to play the guitar and sing, and found quite an early love for it. His father was a jukebox salesman, and that's where Fred gained his musical experience and came to enjoy all genres of music. He would distill everything on the jukebox, and that's really evident in his first solo album. There's a real blend of genres from pop to country to folk to blues. There's everything on that album, and that started off early. His parents divorced when he was 9. Fred's mother had several jobs, and she was a switchboard operator for a taxi rank or something, and she was a waitress and a nurse, all sorts of things. His father basically just fucked off back to Ohio, and I think didn't really have much of a relationship with him.
Well, apart from the jukebox.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that influence very early on was very big for him. Yeah, I think after the age of 9, didn't really see him very much. And so Addie Neal, who I mentioned earlier, Fred's grandmother, was also a big part of his life. And she was incredibly audio sensitive, and that's supposedly Fred got that from her as well. It's said that his grandmother could hear a train whistle and tell you if it would rain and for how long it would, which is they said that a couple of times, and they said it to be true, not like an exaggeration. Like that's
A train whistle.
A train whistle. You could hear a train whistle and tell you if it was going to rain. And so
Do the train whistles indicate rain or
I have no idea. I think maybe it's the way that the sound's carried.
the steam?
The way that sounds
Steam
carried.
engines?
I don't know. I don't know how that works. It doesn't elaborate on that in the book.
Anyone listening who has any scientific or physics knowledge?
If there's anyone that can do that, please get in contact. I'd love to speak to you and understand how that works. So Fred later in his life, his instrument of choice was a 12-string guitar, and they were notoriously difficult to keep in tune, and this would lead to lots of outbursts from Fred because of his audio sensitivity, he would know he wanted it precisely in tune, which was quite a difficult task with a 12-string guitar.
Yeah, he should have just stuck with a 6-string if he cared that much.
But he loved the sound so much, and I think a lot of that kind of dreamy sound, especially it's on the second album. I don't know if you'd get that.
Tim Buckley used a 12-string as well.
I'm not sure about that one.
I feel like he did, but am I wrong?
So Fred says. So this is from Fred, but also the thing you need to know about Fred is that he told lots of different people lots of different stories, and so it's hard to pin down exactly what's true. But he says that he lied about his age and joined the Navy when he was 17 and was deployed to Korea. Although in the book he states that, Peter Lee Neff states that this can't have been true because when Fred was deployed was 2 weeks before the Korean War ended. So why would they be sending him out there? Anyway, but he was actually in the Navy. He was honorably discharged 2 weeks before his required service time. Don't know why.
So like a clear love for maritime and the ocean.
Yes.
And from
an early age, he clearly loved. I mean, living in Florida near the sea, you'd have to really. And also, what I meant to say actually earlier, talking about Addie Neal, is that it is interesting that trains, rain, and his grandmother come up quite a lot in his songwriting. I
mean, if she could, it's kind of a magical thing. You'd want it, like if this story about her being able to predict the rain.
Yeah,
you'd be singing about it a lot too. Can you believe what my grandma can do? Neither can I.
God, I love that Fred Nilsson song. So after he comes back from the Navy, he meets and marries Leilani Michaels. They separate less than a year later, and Leilani, I believe that's how you pronounce it, Leilani. Leilani.
Anyone with the name Leilani listening in?
Please call in. The number is. I don't have a number. She would go on to be she would go on to be a semi-successful model.
Nice.
Yeah.
My guy Fred Neal.
And Louis Armstrong was playing in Florida, and Fred manages to get in there without a ticket. And he was about 21, and during an intermission, he actually gets backstage and meets Louis Armstrong. And Louis Armstrong would be a big inspiration for him. You can see still like this wide range of musical taste. Armstrong would actually later cover Everybody's Talkin' as well. And if you have a chance, I'd give it a listen. It's interesting. It's almost disco. It's very odd. It is very, very strange. But apparently that was like Fred loved that. He it was a really proud moment for him, the fact that Louis covered that.
Yeah, I wonder if Louis remembered meeting him and was like, I'm going to cover this kid's song.
By the sounds of it, it was a very brief meeting, so I would assume not. But that would be interesting to find out. So this is in 1957. So this is when I think, Fred was born in 36, so yeah, Fred would have been about 21 at this time. He's performing at this concert on the pier in St. Petersburg, Florida, and he's the star of the show. Everybody's come to see Fred, and he's so good, in fact, that there's a write-up in the newspaper about him, and that gets the attention of a guy from Mercury Records in New York, and they get him over there, and they sign him on a 1-year contract. So this is Fred Neal's foot in the door in New York. He's got a record contract already. He's only just got to New York. Great stuff. He recorded a few rockabilly songs with Mercury Records. Nothing particularly. I mean, he if you listen to the records, they're okay. I don't think they're anything more than just regular rockabilly stuff. I mean, I'll be careful to speak about rockabilly because my dad's a big rockabilly guy, but they're pretty bog standard stuff. It's him kind of trying to find his voice a little bit, and it's again interesting, like adding another genre that he was into and listening to, and there's such a wide range. He wasn't by any means narrow-minded in his view of music. Music could be anything. He played everything.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe he was pushed in a certain direction, maybe by the label execs, or which could also lead to why he wasn't so keen on being famous. Or
that comes in big later on. That's a very acute observation there, Paul. Next year, 1958, he meets Elaine Berman, and they marry, and they have a child together. Apparently, they are living hand to mouth in an incredibly depressing apartment in New York. Elaine had a joke that the lights would go out in their apartment whilst they were eating sometimes, and Elaine would go, "I can't see my beans," and that would kill Fred, and he'd die laughing.
You had to be there.
Yeah, I'm sure, but I say that because that's important later on. That comes up anyway. So to supplement, I mean, obviously they're living hand to mouth, and they have a child now. So he supplements his income by working at a place called the Brill Building. Have you ever heard of the Brill Building?
No.
So I actually hadn't either before this, but it was a place of lots of songwriting and recording. Lots of people worked there over the years. I've got a brief list of notable people that worked there. Leiber and Stoller, Burt Bacharach and Hal David, Carole King, Neil Diamond, Paul Simon, Phil Spector, Bobby Darin, Gene Pitney, Donald Fagen, Frankie Valli, Dee Dee and Dionne Warwick, the Drifters and the Shangri-Las are all people that would have at some point written there or recorded there. Yeah, it was a really interesting place. It's now a pharmacy. So, anyway.
New York, baby.
He was earning an extra $40 a week there, plus all of his money he was getting from that record contract. Fred has one story there. He was in a recording session with Ray Charles, and Fred plays him a song they're about to sing on. Ray Charles is about to perform on the piano. Fred plays for him on the guitar, and Ray goes, "Oh, that's great, man. Have you got the sheet music for that?" And Fred's like, "Oh, no, I don't." He's about to rush out the door, and he turns around and goes, "Oh, you've had me," because
Ray Charles is blind.
Ray Charles was blind and couldn't see the sheet music. Anyway, so whilst he's there at the Brill Building, he actually wrote Candyman for Roy Orbison and Come Back Baby for Buddy Holly.
I can't say I know either of those two songs.
No, they're not.
Like a bit of Orbison, but.
Candyman actually, interestingly, was Roy Orbison's first B-side single to chart. So actually, it was semi-successful.
Okay.
Come Back Baby, nothing particularly notable about that one. He actually did play on Bobby Darin's Dream Lover. Have you heard that song?
No, but I know that Bobby Darin does a cover of La Mer, aka Beyond the Sea.
Oh, really?
It's an old gypsy jazz song that has been reappropriated and made into this big swing thing. It's in Goodfellas.
Oh, is it? Oh, I don't know.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me.
Oh, I can't say I know that
Which
one.
also kind of sounds like a Fred Neil song.
It does a little bit, yeah.
It's in the same vein as the Dolphins, but anyway, I'll let you carry on.
No, that's good. I didn't know that.
What was it called?
Dream Lover.
Dream Lover.
So apparently Fred put paper between the strings to create the sound that's heard on the song. And actually Dream Lover is like I only looked on Spotify, but it's one of his most streamed songs. So
Beyond the Sea will be his top, I reckon.
I think they might be right. So it's during this time that basically the story goes. Have you heard "That's the Bag I'm In" by Fred Neil?
No.
Okay, well it was one of his big songs. He wrote it on the back of a brown paper bag in a cab going uptown, and I think it was about a 10-minute cab ride, and he still had time to spare. It's a really fun song. It's a good song. But yeah, he wrote that. Just that's how the story goes. Anyway, so another interesting Fred Gumpian fact about him. Fred Gumpian? Forrest Gumpian.
Forrest Gump. Fred.
Was that he actually, for one of Elvis's films, there was a recording of a song meant to send to Elvis to see if he wanted it for the film. And Fred Neil sang on the recording meant for Elvis, but unfortunately they didn't use it.
Because they were really trying with those Elvis films.
Oh yeah,
they
those
had a high
Elvis
bar
films
for
are...
entry.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the music's pretty good, but yeah, the films aren't fantastic.
It's essentially he's the original Timothy Chalamet, just like peddling his music with a film.
Elvis.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm spitballing it.
Yeah, I'm just making sure. But it felt like the films were promotional material for the music, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas Marty Supreme does his SD Kid thing to promote a film. So
that's true, actually. Yeah, that's just talking about Elvis, 1950s New York. Yeah, I mean, I guess that
sorry,
we are in 1950s
we're hot off
New
the
York.
Marty Supreme episode, so it's still on the mind.
Yeah.
Not extremely relevant to Fred Neil. But
No, but that's interesting. So he's still at the Brill Building, and he goes through a few one-year recording contracts with different record labels, and he puts out rockabilly songs. He's searching for his musical voice and can't really seem to come up with anything. I think mostly Fred was a man of the 60s, and the time wasn't quite ready for him to musically express himself. I think he had some big ideas about what he wanted to do, and there wasn't space for him yet. In 1960, Elaine and Fred separate. Elaine would later marry a man called Tony Orlando. I don't know if you know this guy, but he's quite a famous musician, apparently.
It's like Tony Baloney kind of.
It does. That has to be a fake name. I didn't look that up, but I'm sure it is.
He's like FBI informant.
He sounds like a guy in Goodfellas. Yeah.
Tony Orlando.
Tony Orlando's a rat.
Just moved up the block.
So in the 1960s, Fred starts spending more time in Greenwich Village. Obviously, there's a burgeoning cafe scene there of folk music and things.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's so many artists actually that came up through there and maybe didn't see their success like Dylan did, but later, like, actually, I'd love to do an episode at a later date if I had anything on him. But Michael Hurley, who died last year, rest in peace. Is a folk musician who was in the Greenwich scene, released an album, and then kind of went into obscurity, I'd say, and released a lot of music and kind of just kept at it for the craft of it, and has got a cult following in his later years. And people like Big Thief have always been have been probably brought quite a bit of attention to him actually, because they talked about enjoying his music. But yeah, the Greenwich Village scene. Yeah,
that's really interesting. I didn't know Michael Hurley was in Greenwich Village. That's really interesting.
Who knows? Him and Fred Neil might have even had a chat.
There's a good chance they would have, because Fred Neil was very popular in the Greenwich Village. Come the early 60s, he was. Bob Dylan described him as the emperor of Cafe Noir. Anyway, here he meets Dino Valenti and Karen Dalton. You might know Karen Dalton.
Yeah.
Really interesting voice. Great singer. Dino Valenti, not as well famous, but that trio would perform around the village quite a lot together, and they were one of the acts to see. If they were on, you'd go and see them. So he starts performing at the Cafe One. Like I just said, a young Bob Dylan would come in to seek him. He was told, go and get Fred, he'll get you a job. And the story goes that actually Fred gave Dylan his first music job. And he was performing harmonica at the Cafe Noir behind Fred Neil.
I was going to say, I remember hearing that his first job was playing harmonica. I think there's a book I read, Chronicles, Bob Dylan's memoirs.
That's in there, yeah.
I think. Does he say Fred Neil?
He does. Yeah, he mentions, he says in there, Dylan says in the book that he was an emperor there at the Cafe Noir.
Oh, so this is all from Chronicles in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
But there's a story in the book. I assume this probably wasn't in Chronicles, but there is a story in the book that Dylan was so bad at those gigs. I mean, the very young Bob Dylan, he wasn't quite the guitar player that he would become. I mean, he wasn't ever well known for his guitar playing, but his voice wasn't quite as developed. And there was a young Italian-American man there, and he wanted him to shut up so badly that he threw a sugar shaker at him whilst he was on stage. And apparently they'd put Dylan on last so that everyone would leave.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so things like that, which is really interesting.
Everyone's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, considering how big Dylan would become, and how famous he was for in the village.
He is maybe that Fred Neil was the emperor of Café Noir, but Bob Dylan is maybe the biggest person to come out of that Greenwich scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, well, obviously, I mean, Dylan's talents probably would have carried him anyway, but Fred giving him his first job is a pretty significant part of that.
Also, doing this episode, talking about Greenwich Village in this episode makes me think of Inside Llewyn Davis, which is a fantastic film that sort of uses the Greenwich Village scene as a backdrop to everything that happens in the film. But
yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that because it was based on Dave Van Ronk, that film, and actually Dave Van Ronk does come up in a bit.
Dave Van Ronk also let Dylan crash at his place, I heard. I think he talked about in Chronicles, and Dylan would read a lot of his literature, which led to his education in a way of how Dylan became such a referential and literature sort of based songwriter. But yeah, it'd be cool to do an episode on Inside Llewyn Davis at some point. Really get into
great film, fantastic film.
Yeah,
and so obviously a part of this village scene was obviously a lot of drugs, and obviously there's a lot of weed being smoked, which that's fairly harmless, but obviously there's a lot of harder stuff happening. Mescaline was a big one, and heroin would start there.
Mescaline is very psychedelic now. It's like DMT.
Yeah, I think it's similar. I'm not exactly sure. Exactly. I did look it up and I can't remember now. But it's so it's a naturally occurring psychedelic compound. Yes, so it's like peyote basically.
Yeah.
Heavy
stuff.
And he would do that and perform for 10 hours at a time in Washington Square Park.
Jesus.
That's heavy stuff. So he meets a guy called Vince Martin, and you probably haven't heard of Vince Martin either, but he's big in the Fred Neil story.
Vince Martin, yeah.
He was famous in 1956. He was a one-hit wonder basically. He did a song called Cindy Oh Cindy that got into the charts and didn't really do anything else. But his friendship with Fred Neil was quite big. Fred's first album was actually a duo album with Vince Martin, and they were lifelong friends really. And Vince introduces Fred to the Coconut Grove, which is where Fred would spend a lot of his time in the next few decades.
What's the Coconut Grove? Is it?
So Coconut Grove is Miami is there. Coconut Grove is just south of it, just outside of Miami, and it's like this artist bohemian type place. And it was just a lot quieter. So when New York got too much for Fred, he'd go out to Coconut Grove and just crash at a friend's place, drink some beer, play some guitar, and there was even a kind of cafe scene there that Fred would partake in, and that's where he found his love for sailing as well. Vince
learned to sail at Coconut Grove.
In Coconut Grove, yeah. It sounds like a great place. Probably not the same.
Sounds like a Mario map.
It does. Yeah, there is a coconut something.
Coconut Mall.
Coconut Mall.
Mario Kart.
So I mean, I did look because I looked this up online as well. So
I can picture it in my head so plainly. Coconut Grove.
Yeah,
it's that whole blue beach island PS2 aesthetic. Kingdom Hearts.
It's apparently a lot of artists would come through there. Apparently the Beatles were there at some point. I'll get back to that in a second. So for this, I would use the book mainly for these notes, but I did try and look up online stuff when I could, and just cross-reference stuff and try and find other sources for other different bits of Fred's life.
Because one of us has done the work.
Yeah, but I mean, this book, That's the Bag I'm In, is basically a Bible for Fred Neil. So, I mean, a lot of this information is from there. But I saw online that some people think that Fred's fondness for sailing came in his youth. Not really too sure, but others say that
as you say, he was in the Navy.
Yeah, see, that's the thing as well.
He grew up in a seaside environment. You know,
he would have certainly been on a sailboat at some point in his youth.
Maybe he discovered or rediscovered his love for it in Coconut Grove. Who knows?
Yeah. And so it was here in Coconut Grove that Fred met his third wife, Linda Watson. They married in 1963. They'd separate later in 1968. And in 1964, Fred and Vince Martin's album, so Fred's not a debut album, but not his solo debut, Tear Down the Walls, was released by Elektra Records. Fred wrote or arranged most of the songs, so some of them were traditionals that he rearranged, or Vince contributed a few, but it was mostly Fred. John Sebastian and Felix Pappalardi were other musicians on the record. John Sebastian, you might know from Love and Spoonful. He would become pretty integral to Fred Neil's. He would in Fred's backing band and things like that. So this become a recurring theme throughout Fred's 60s records, is that they would get high praise from critics and musicians, but would fail to find any kind of purchase in the market and wouldn't chart. And he was fairly underground, really. He wasn't didn't ever really take off. And Richie Havens tells a story. Do you know who Richie Havens is? He was
rings a bell.
He was a big protest singer in the 60s.
Yeah.
And he says that watching Fred and Vince perform Tear Down the Walls inspired him to write protest music. And before that, actually, he was an artist. He was a mural painter in New York, and actually Fred spotted him and gave him his first guitar, apparently. So later on, an incident at the Bitter End. Do you know what the Bitter End is? It's a New York.
No.
It's a spot in New York that was quite famous for music and stuff. Fred's debut album was called Bleecker and McDougal, and it was on McDougal Street, and so that was a lot of the music, like cafes. And
we used to have a teacher called McDougal, didn't we?
We did. That's true. Actually, I actually just put that together. I was trying to
figure out where I knew that name from.
Yeah,
I want to say IT, but
no, he was the assistant headmaster.
Definitely,
anyway,
definitely wasn't PE. It's such an in joke.
That's an in joke that no one's... Anyway. So whilst he's here, like I said earlier, he has the problem with the 12-string guitar. And that leads him to get so infuriated that he smashes the guitar backstage. And in the attendance at this gig was Albert Grossman and other representatives of Elektra Records. And that basically ends Vince and Fred's any chance of a follow-up album. Do you know who Albert Grossman is?
Yes, he was the manager for Bob Dylan, no?
Yeah, that's correct.
And
lots of other people.
Portrayed in the movie, obviously, as well, on Complete Unknown.
Oh yeah, yes, he is in that.
He plays. I think I wouldn't have known who he was if he wasn't played such a big part in that. Oh, he's played by a big actor, a titan.
But yeah, he's also in that documentary. Don't Look Back. Is it Don't Look Back?
There's Don't Look Back, and then there's No Direction Home. It's the Scorsese one.
Don't Look Back is the Pennybacker one, isn't it? He's
Oh, okay, never mind. It's a guy called Dan Fogler.
I think he's quite big though, isn't he? He's done quite a lot.
He portrayed Francis Ford Coppola in a mini-series. He was in a Harry Potter spin-off,
Bit of a
Fantastic
typecast
Beasts. Yeah, no idea, but shout out. I remember him.
Anyway, there is quite a famous scene in Don't Look Back where Albert Grossman's in it. Anyway, so that obviously goes down awfully, and any chance of a follow-up album is shelved. So that doesn't happen. The next year, though, Fred released his solo debut album, Bleecker and McDougal, with Elektra Records still. The production of this album was quite torturous for Fred. So the producer, a guy called Paul Rothchild, was always pushing Fred to do more and more, and that's not really how Fred performed. He liked to be laid back. He liked to do what he wanted and take it slow. And Paul was like, no, more, go again. Although other people that Fred was close to also admitted that Fred could be quite hard to work with. He was always kind of a bit temperamental, and he stormed out a few times. And Peter Childs tells a story that after probably about the second or third storm out, he thought that it actually might be it. Like he might not come back again and finish the album. So it's fine. I'll go chase him, and I will get him to calm down, and we'll play some music in my room. And whilst they're there, they're playing, I think, about 6 or 7 songs, and Peter Childs records the whole thing, and it's actually just come out on Spotify and everything. I think it's called McDougal 38 or something. 38 McDougal, and it's really good. You get to see Fred in his natural environment, which was sat down on a sofa with some friends, just playing along, just doing what they wanted, and really laid back. It's a really good record. During these sessions for this album, John Sebastian describes him as Grateful Dead before the Grateful Dead, and that because he would compliment. He would like long instrumentals and a raga, they called them, and it's
like an Indian raga.
Raga. I've just read it.
I don't know if that's like what it's referencing.
Raga, yeah.
Nice. For all that mescaline he's doing.
Yeah, that probably helps him out. But John Sebastian says that it's these recording sessions that taught him the skills that he needed to have a string of hits with the Lovin' Spoonful in the 60s. And so people in the book, everybody that Neff spoke to, said that it was the record label's fault for lack of advertising. The album didn't do very well commercially, but all the critics, all the musicians loved it. And I'll just wrap this up quickly, just by saying the people that have covered songs from that album, so everybody from Harry Belafonte to Waylon Jennings to the Youngbloods to the Animals, everybody in between. A Little Bit of Rain was the big one.
Karen Dalton
covered that, did a really good cover of that. Candyman was also covered quite a bit. That's one Waylon Jennings did. Willie Nelson even said of A Little Bit of Rain that it's one of his favourite songs to listen to late at night. And after the release of that album, Paul Newman came and sought Fred out to go and see him live. So,
he's building up steam.
He's building up a lot of steam. So I'm trying to paint a picture of a guy who is he is getting out there, and he's getting known by a lot of people in the industry, and all in the wake. This is all coming up to what would be his next album, which I think is his masterpiece, and I think is one of the greatest albums of the 60s.
So you want to hear about that? You have to tune in next 2 episodes time. We take a little hiatus from Fred Neil for next week's episode.
Don't want to get Fred Neil all
kneeled out.
All kneeled out. Okay, then join us next time.
Old Man Media.